Paul Adler, CEO of KorteQ, is our next speaker. He originally graduated in physics from Oxford University and has a management diploma at Manchester. He has been involved with training and engineering and various sectors, not just in the nuclear industry, and he's going to tell us about the nuclear workforce.
So we have a theme of the conference. We've heard a lot about change in the industry, from climate change, from change in the economy, the credit crunch, through change in the energy mix, and of course change in the way we need to communicate our message. And I suppose some of you are dreading the topic. There's something else we have to change now. We have to update all our training and learning for this renewal of the nuclear workforce. Well, yes, we do. And the scale of the change in the workforce, as we know, is quite dramatic. I think it's well accepted by now that around half of our workforce is over the age of 50, and up to, say, 40% of the workforce will reach retirement age within the next 5 years or so. Now, whereas we, in our association, the WNA, have created the World Nuclear University, and that's really a beacon of change for the industry, the scale of the workforce renewal that we're talking about is something that could really dwarf the efforts of a single body like the World Nuclear University. And so we have to think about this renewal of the workforce not just at an individual organization level, but also at a sector and a supply chain level. And I'm going to talk mostly from the perspective of the UK, where we have fortunately been in a position that the UK body, the Nuclear Industry Association, and the supply chain players, largely based in the UK, have taken a very proactive approach to looking at the challenges of the skills gap and the workforce renewal. And the trends that you can see on this slide are largely representative of the trends you will see in many other countries around the world, represented here in this room. The yellow line reflects the decline in the workforce through a combination of attrition and retirement. And the other two lines, the purple and blue, depending on your view on new build, the pace at which new build will arrive, and the scenarios for how many new plants will be built. You know, that can vary, but roughly speaking, there's a significant gap of which is already evident from today. Now, the UK has created an organization called Cogent, which is a skills body for the nuclear industry, and Cogent regularly updates these statistics so that the public and training providers can be better informed on the nature of the challenge and the opportunity. And in fact, only yesterday, just bringing this right up to date, Cogent published their latest report called Power People, which brings up to date all the statistics and the implications. And in fact, the implication is that in the UK we'll need to attract, hire, recruit, retain, and train and develop over 1,000 new engineers and graduates into the industry every year between now to 2025, just to sustain the current level of generation. Turning now to the delivery of training, there is another body called the National Skills Academy for Nuclear in the UK, which is dedicated to making sure that the gap you see up there does not become a reality, and to counter the risks of the skills gap. And the National Skills Academy is working with universities, training providers, industry, and the government to create an infrastructure where the training can take place. They have many important initiatives in progress. You can read about them on their websites, and many will be rolled out immediately starting next year. So with thinking about the change at the industry or sector level, we also have to think about change at the organization level. I know my fellow panel members have many a good story to tell about what is happening in their organizations. We can't rely on the industry training bodies to do everything for us. After all, we are accountable for our own success in the nuclear future. So I'd like to just take a view on what is happening at an organizational level. And on the left-hand side of the slide, I would like to contrast what you might call a linear approach to organization skills and knowledge development, the evolution of training. So we hire people in with a given set of qualifications. They acquire knowledge. They may go away to training to build their competence. They may even gain additional qualifications. That's the kind of training bit. And then in some organizations, you have then a doing bit, which is actually executing the work processes, following the procedures, and building experience. But sometimes the training and the doing are in a kind of a rotational cycle, and they're not really connected up. So we believe on the right-hand side of the slide, you might call a learning ecosystem is something to aim for, whereby each of those elements could be joined up, and one could feed the other in a way I'll describe in the following slides. But that would mean that for the individual, learning in our industry, our sector, and the capability we need becomes more of a continuous process, and in that way becomes embedded in the way we do business, and hence will become a routine which is able to fill those workforce gaps. I can see maybe some questioning in the room, some skepticism to say, well, you know, that all sounds very nice, but in my organization we have other priorities, we're all very busy, maybe we don't have time to devote to such matters. And of course, in talking to you around the conference and talking to our colleagues in the industry, we do hear of the difficulties that people face in prosecuting this improvement and modernization of learning. That people say, well, we tried many initiatives, we hired some retired employees back as contractors and they're helping out, but we don't really have a momentum, we can't see a kind of synchronized program to achieve the renewal and the improvements to learning that we need. How can we make this a more systematic approach for the future? So what we believe is that it's actually by connecting up the learning and development needs and imperatives to the real business issues, the strategic issues for the business that many of you are facing out there today in your own countries, your own organizations, by making that link and establishing a way to measure improvements in learning and development against the strategic imperatives, that is the way a business case can be made. It can be measured, it can be goaled, and can be run as a systematic program. And that is something that is not for the future, it's to protect the future, but we believe it's important to start now, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that a little bit later on. So you can start now, and the good news is that the payback is also in financial terms back to the organization. Now, how does that happen? Due to the short time of this talk, I only will touch on three aspects of improvement that can generate a payback in the organization, which are the means to accelerate learning in the organization, a means to improve the day-to-day, the core business processes of the organization, and some techniques to improve a way to get more systematic in the structure of decision-making. Of course, all of these efforts can be seen as perhaps an overhead at a time when everybody has many things on their minds, and how do you make time for this? The trick really is to build from the start towards a situation where these changes are embedded in everyday ways of working, so it becomes a natural way that people work. And we've seen examples where within 12 or 18 months there could be major progress towards that goal, so that It just becomes the way we work and we learn around here. So just talking briefly about the tricks of the trade for accelerating learning, you can see on the slide in the main blue column, there is what you might call a traditional path for training and development or career development in this industry, which has consisted of, if you like, traditional job rotations and training courses and so on, so that we build up, as people in this room know very well, over a period maybe of decades, to a very high level of expertise and credibility in the organization, and a very key role. Now, of course, we know that the scarcer the skill or the more specialized expertise, the more risk potentially to the organization of how to replace that expertise with, by means of training the up-and-coming generation. Was this generation that's entering the industry, they're more mobile, they're more ambitious, they're more flexible, they're more demanding than the people of previous generations. They have a higher expectations of a career and what that will deliver for them in terms of job satisfaction and a balanced lifetime. So, fortunately, there are some very simple techniques, many of which have been well documented, to transfer knowledge and experience from the more experienced mentors through to the younger people coming up. What we would say is you can do that in a very systematic way that delivers benefits, and essentially you're going to create a new capacity in the workforce much quicker than was it the case in the past. So it's all about a systematic, targeted approach, and we can make that a reality. Turning now briefly to the topic of business processes, we all understand, especially in our industry, the rigor and discipline that is needed to run our operations, to complete safety case reviews, to complete design reviews, and to progress with the contracting and operations. So there's nothing new in the industry about defining our business processes. What we're interested in is how the knowledge, experience, and scarce skills, the know-how, if you like, interacts with those processes. How is knowledge generated? What about the emergent experience of new aspects that are going to come up with the new build and the new designs? How do we capture that? And moreover, how do we feed that into a new curriculum so that the up-and-coming generation can really benefit from that, both the past experience and the emergent experience? But fortunately, this is where our new kind of web-based experience, we've talked about the up-and-coming generation that's familiar with the YouTube and the e-learning and the video clips, and they have a real hunger to learn. This is where we can exploit that enthusiasm for new digital media and create training resources which are updated by the user base, the operators, the engineers, for their colleagues in the same user base, for their peers. So we no longer have some kind of central authority writing training material in dusty books. We have a very vibrant, maybe an intranet-based mechanism to get knowledge to the point of need. And these tools are not expensive. They are available today. These are things that are very quick to implement, either on a web-based or via your own intranets. And by these means, we can deliver a true learning from experience environment. My final innovation we've called structured decision making. This is something that you will all be familiar with in the way that, for example, safety cases are built up between the claims at the top, the arguments, and the supporting evidence. Equally can apply to looking at different options for new build or for designs. When you have the main target, the options that are considered, the advantages, the disadvantages, and the supporting evidence, and in that way to create a decision-making process which is kind of self-documenting is something that we found is incredibly beneficial for productivity in the organization, and also as a means of a learning template for people coming up through the organization, that these a kind of library of past cases you can refer to that will also increase the quality and the reliability, the completeness, and mitigate the risk in terms of the myriad of new decisions that are going to have to be made.